Whether you're a small studio making ends meet or a huge AAA developer, game development is tough. The process is rife with creative decisions, technical issues, and general turmoil. So of course, it doesn't help when a publisher who helps bankroll a project and markets it utterly mucks about with development. Let's take a look at games that suffered from publisher interference, both allegedly and obviously. Dragon Age 2. Don't you just love it when a publisher wants a sequel for your game, especially with just 14 to 16 months for development? Such was the fate of Dragon Age 2 thanks to EA, and as a result, BioWare ended up cutting a lot of story content and scaling back on the locations, besides crunching continuously. Granted, the sequel would find some appreciation, especially for what it offered in its short development cycle, but such haphazard development was not needed. Dead Space 3. More interference from EA? Yeah, more interference from EA. Visceral Games' Dead Space franchise was known for its psychological horror and disturbing content. However, in an effort to make it more appealing for wider audiences, EA apparently decided that Dead Space 3 should de-emphasize the horror and have more action. Oh, and throw in some microtransactions for the crafting system because reasons. Creative director Ben Winnat stated in 2017 that having tons of action and microtransactions were not part of the original design and that EA's expectations essentially ruined the series. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. From its initial reveal, Monolith Productions' Middle-earth: Shadow of War was a slam dunk. More moves, bigger battles, building an army, multi-tiered assaults, it seemed like a dream come true. Then, of course, it was mucked about with numerous shady practices. From legendary gear and followers and loot boxes to segmented DLC, it was looking more and more like Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment wanted to monetize the heck out of this. Given the loot chest system seen in games like Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11, it's perhaps not all that surprising. Thankfully, the real money store was removed in a subsequent update. LAIR. A dogfighting game with friggin' dragons. Really, what more needs to be said? Factor 5's LAIR sounded cool on paper, but Sony reportedly mandated one big change that killed it at launch: 6-axis controls. The game had to use the PS3's botched motion controls, which resulted in horrible flying mechanics. This isn't to say that the rest of the game was amazing, but the 6-axis was the biggest nail in the coffin. In 2007, Sony Europe Executive VP Phil Harrison denied that it mandated motion controls for the game, but director Julian Eggenbrecht has stated otherwise, so draw your own conclusions. Fuse. The story of Fuse is an odd one indeed. Developed by Insomniac, it was first revealed at E3 2011 as Overstrike and had a more vibrant feel. It went missing and resurfaced in August of 2012 as Fuse, but with a much more serious tone and muted colors. While Insomniac CEO Ted Price talked about the reasons for all of these changes, from making the weapons have more impact to a more sophisticated sense of humor, rumors claim that publisher EA had pushed for the same. Given the latter's reputation, it's certainly not surprising. Halo 2. Bungie has a history of biting off more than it can chew, as the failed launches of Destiny 1 and 2 can attest. With Halo 2, it went completely overboard, creating an entire smoke and mirrors gameplay demo for E3 2003. The final game would also release with a distinct lack of polish and a major cliffhanger. Interestingly, Halo 3 was thought up before Halo 2 even released and began development as other staff members worked on Halo 2's additional content. While it was never really confirmed how much Microsoft interfered with the series' development, the fact that Bungie was happy to get away from it is indicative enough. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Konami's meddling with Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, from reports of isolating director Hideo Kojima from his team to doggedly pushing for its completion, has earned the publisher a dubious reputation. We'll refrain from going through the whole terrible saga of mistreating its developers, having generally terrible working conditions, and the general dismissal of Kojima, including scrubbing his name from the game's box art. However, for all of its faults, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain clearly had content cut. Despite ending at Mission 46, footage of an apparent Mission 51 was included in the Collector's Edition and provided better closure to the events overall. This isn't factoring in the missing Chapter 3, which still fuels conspiracy theories to this day. Star Wars 1313. The team behind Star Wars 1313 had it rough. When the project first began development, LucasArts would continuously interfere. Creator George Lucas reportedly suggested the game to tie into Star Wars Underworld, a live-action TV series. Then, just 2 months before its reveal at E3 2012, Lucas wanted the game to change direction completely and star a younger Boba Fett. The end would truly come when LucasArts was acquired by Disney and the development team was eventually let go. Need for Speed Payback. While most of us had focused on Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the completely botched pay-to-win progression system, Electronic Arts' Need for Speed Payback wasn't much better. Cars were severely limited in terms of customization. You had to use performance parts from speed cards or shipments, which were essentially loot boxes. Despite the assurance of offline single-player, microtransactions riddled the already underwhelming racer to a ludicrous degree. Telltale Games' mismanagement. Much has been said about the fall of Telltale Games, with the studio announcing its closure in September of 2018. Several developers on titles like The Wolf Among Us Season 2, Game of Thrones Season 2, and Stranger Things were subsequently let go. However, prior to this, employees complained of crunch and how the constant drive to release episodes for new games resulted in poor quality and limited creativity. It also didn't help that upper management, including CEO Kevin Bruner, constantly demanded reworks and rewrites, sticking to the same format that made The Walking Dead successful while doing nothing to retain talented but disgruntled employees. Bruner stepped down in 2017 and Telltale restructured, but the studio still faced closure after losing its last big investor. Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. Deus Ex: Mankind Divided had quite the grueling development cycle, and while it's still a fairly big game, many felt let down by the abrupt ending. That being said, a lot of other negative aspects were apparently mandated by Square Enix. Jim Sterling spoke to an anonymous source from Eidos Montreal, whose information lined up with other sources, and about how the publisher wanted microtransactions near the end of the development cycle. Breach mode was also added in to cash in on the free-to-play craze and faced its fair share of meddling. Did we mention a sequel to Mankind Divided was also in the works? Not much has been said about it since Mankind Divided's underwhelmed in its reception. HAZE. In case you thought Ubisoft was above all of this nonsense, it caused quite a bit of trouble for Free Radical Designs' HAZE. It first began as a third-person action-adventure title but was changed to a first-person shooter to compete with the likes of Halo and Call of Duty. Though originally slated for Xbox 360, PS3, and PC, Ubisoft made the decision to launch exclusively on Sony's console for marketing purposes and delayed HAZE so that more features could be added. Dungeon Keeper. Of course, it's worth rounding off with another tribute to EA and its ruination of Dungeon Keeper. Bullfrog Productions' Dungeon Keeper series was a quirky, fun dungeon management title, and following the acclaim the second game received, a third game seemed about right. However, following an announcement in February of 2000, development would be cancelled just a month later so that Bullfrog could work on other games. But that's not the end of it. EA tapped Mythic Entertainment of Dark Age of Camelot fame to create Dungeon Keeper Mobile, a reboot and microtransaction-filled mockery of the series for iOS and Android. The series' dark tone was gone, and its gameplay was skewed heavily in favor of paying to progress. It was peak EA in the worst possible way. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.